Welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 10, I believe. We were just trying to figure that out as we started recording. I'm your co-host, Chris Dorst. I'm the philosophy professor and the Steelers fan.
I'm your other co-host, Ajay Nair, and I am the psychiatrist and the Chiefs fan. I didn't even tell you this, Chris, but right after we finished last time, I think a day or two after we finished episode 9, I got a notification on YouTube that our videos have been viewed 30,000 times. So obviously for the larger scope of YouTube, that's not a huge number, but I feel like we're small fries. Like, that's pretty good. 30,000
30,000.
views across all of our videos. Yeah.
That is a lot. I asked you this question last time, but I wonder if a bot can watch a video and if that counts. Like, what is a view exactly?
Yeah, I
Do we
don't know,
know?
especially with the shorts. So my wife actually looked this up, and I forget the verbiage that she told me, which shows how well I pay attention. But it was something to do with like because at least on a regular video, you don't get it immediately from a play. They determine like whether they feel like there was actual intent to watch the video, and I don't know how much time or what that for. I'm paraphrasing what she told me, but there was actually like an actual phrase that was used that I don't remember what it was now.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool. We could get into that actually. Like, there's a philosophical question here about what what constitutes the intent, right?
that's true.
Uh,
It's true.
I like that. Anyway,
And then shorts, like, I really don't know because I know for when I look at our viewing stats and stuff on TikTok, it will say things like people like so many people watched for 1 second, and I'm like, is that even a view? Like, like, and they just basically saw our faces and were like, nope, swipe right off.
yeah, that's a good. I wonder how many people would do this. Just see our face. No, hell no. Like,
And
go right
I'm
by them.
pretty sure like YouTube Shorts doesn't count that because they'll give you a percentage of like what percentage of people viewed and what percentage of people swiped away when it was put in front.
Hmm.
And I don't know what other people, anyone else on YouTube, you can tell me what our numbers are like. But for us, I feel like we do well when a video is above 40% viewed. Like when we have 60 or fewer percent people swiping away, like that's a good video. And I feel like when we're below 30, that's a bad video. The 30 to 40 seems to be like, okay.
Like pretty standard. Yeah. I don't. I guess people just do this now, right? They just sit and they scroll through shorts. Is that?
Yeah.
I guess that's how you watch TikTok. Maybe that's how you watch YouTube now as well. I am out of touch. Anyway, yeah.
um, well, I should at least let the people know what our TikTok and everything. So our TikTok is at STCF8. Our Instagram, where you can scroll through our reels, is at STCF715. The podcast form is available wherever you download podcasts, and we're on YouTube. And on Twitter at thoughts 14820.
Exactly. 14,820. Very natural. Well, thank you for all the engagement. 30,000 views is quite a lot, even if a good portion of those might be bots. Who knows? But thank you. We appreciate the engagement.
I don't mind catering to bots. We can if you have any
Yeah.
bot related content that you'd like us to talk about, just let us know.
Yeah. We should just cater exclusively to bots, maybe, and we can build our brand that way. Okay, well, do we have anything to follow up on from last time? I don't think
Yeah,
I
nothing
do.
that I recall.
Okay. So we should get into some current state of the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think
Is
it
that right?
is time to start with the Chiefs this time.
Okay. Well, my first question is really just uh, kind of an invitation to reminisce on the past season, but I wanted to ask you for your, at this stage, most memorable plays from the regular season and from the postseason. Does any, are you at the stage where plays stand out in that respect?
Yeah, I think so. I think the most memorable play of the entire season is the Super Bowl winning touchdown. Like that still just kind of like last year the corn dog plays ended up being like the theme of the year. I feel like now we know it was a combination of two very big staples of Andy Reid. We had like the power shovel on the inside where we do like the shovel pass with power behind power blocking, and so we had that set up, and then on the other side we had corn dog set up, and it was kind of based on what Nick Bosa did, and he crashed in on the shovel and corn dog was wide open. um, so that was big. I think of the regular season, the number one play I think would be when we played the Dolphins in Germany, and Trent McDuffie stripped Tyreek Hill, and Mike Edwards picked it up and lateraled it back to Brandon Cook, who took it for a touchdown. Like that, if we didn't have a Super Bowl winning touchdown, that might have been the play of the season. Like that was really an incredible play.
That was the
Um,
one I was gonna guess. That's what I wrote down here. If I had to guess a regular season play, that would be it. Because that was just it was so perfect in so many respects, dude. And it was right before half, wasn't it? It was
right before
like
half, yeah, I think like 30
inside two
seconds or
minutes.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, what a play.
that was a fantastic play. And the other like major highlight play that I remember from the regular season was Clyde Edwards-Helaire had like a huge leap for a touchdown against the Patriots. I think you were at that game, right?
I
In
was.
the back of the end zone.
I don't know if I remember that play though for some reason.
He
Um,
Mahomes kind of scrambled to his left and just threw it up, and Clyde, who's like 5'7", like went up and got it, like uh, in the back of
that's
the end
nice.
zone. That was a great touchdown. But I will say,
Uh,
like, so weirdly enough, just in like thematically in the season, I would have to put up like the Kadarius Toney offensive offsides. Like, it was a really cool play, and it was brought back by penalty, and it was emblematic of how we played during the year. Like, I feel like that would have to be included in like the most memorable plays of the season. Like, they're just more fun to laugh about now that we won the Super Bowl. Like
yeah, that
that,
sort of just like takes all the pain out of that getting called back.
yeah.
Like, it
I mean, that was
didn't
such
matter
an
anymore.
awesome play. Like Travis Kelsey just lateraling it. And one of the things that he talked about on his podcast that I hadn't noticed was how close that pass came to be being, that lateral came to be being tipped. Like there was a defender kind of really swinging. Like he said when he released it, he was like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be tipped," like, but he managed to get that. That was a great play. I feel like again, kind of just more of a symbolic play. Rasheed Rice had he just ran like a straight fly route and caught like a 67-yard pass against the Bengals in week 17, which I think was just a little bit of an injection of hope that maybe our offense could do something going into the playoffs. Like I feel like that's why I remember that play so much. Um,
And they did do something
yeah,
going into the playoffs. Maybe it was a harbinger.
it was a more meaningless game, but our Week 18 game against the Chargers, where we sat all our starters, Mike Edwards. Well, I mean, not Emmanuel. Wow, no, we haven't had him in a long time. Charles Omenihu came and stripped sacked Easton Stick, and Mike Edwards ran it back like 94 yards, I think, for a touchdown. 96 yards, something like that. So that was a fun play. And then in that same game, Chris Jones got his incentive gaining sack, his 10th sack. And apparently, when he ran off the field after that sack celebration, that's the fastest next gen stats tracked him running on the field the entire season.
That's awesome. uh, like in any play of the season, that was
Any
the
play,
fastest he ran.
apparently. Yeah.
Why was he playing in that game?
Just to get the incentive.
Just okay.
He just stayed in the game, and it took until like the third quarter for him to get his sack. And
Well, you gotta.
Andy Reid wanted to pull him, and he kept arguing like, no, no, I want to keep playing. And he, I guess Andy's a player coach. He let him keep going.
Yeah, it's awesome. He let him. That's pretty cool. Um,
I know I've
uh,
listed a ton, but there are a lot of plays too. I feel like we got the back shoulder to Kelsey against the Ravens, the punch out by Snead against the Ravens at the goal line, the crazy third down conversion where Mahomes is like running around and gets nailed and throws it to Kelsey, who dives against the Ravens. Like, uh, I mean, a couple plays against the Bills, I feel like wide right. Sorry, Bills fan. Like that, that was a very memorable play. Uh, uh, and both of Kelsey's touchdowns, I feel like, were. And then where the game really swung was the Damar Hamlin fake punt. Us stopping that was a really big play. And then
Yeah,
Trent McDuffie nailed Tyreek a couple times against the Dolphins. Those were both Snead jammed him at the line and like knocked him down, which is one of my favorite plays from the entire season.
that was
And
in the
then
playoffs.
Mahomes is in the playoffs, yeah. And then Mahomes' scramble that led to like the piece of his helmet coming off. I feel like that's going to be an iconic Chiefs play now that we won the Super Bowl, especially.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be one of those plays that you remember. Yeah, it's like when I remember Ben Roethlisberger getting his nose broken or something. You'll remember that helmet breaking play. It's not like it was like crucial to the game or anything, but yeah, one you'll look back on. But yeah, that Tyreek Hill play in the regular season, I think just, I mean, that would have, yeah, again, that's what I was guessing it was going to be just because of how everything sort of aligned there, right? I mean, it's Tyreek Hill playing against the Chiefs right before halftime, and it's an awesome defensive play, right, with the lateral that who was it that ran it all the way back?
Brian Cook was the one who
Right.
took it
Okay.
back.
I
And
remember him
he
just like zooming down the sideline. It was like long striding.
Yeah, long strides. His knees were. He looked like he was like actually a sprinter and like a sprinter. I've never seen a football player run like that on the field.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, so that was maybe more of a fun question. Maybe this will only fun too, but I indicated last week we should talk sometime about the worst calls that have gone against the Chiefs in your time watching them. So uh, we've already talked about the forward progress play, which was the most ridiculous call, most ridiculous use of forward progress I think that we had ever seen against Mariota in the playoffs. But what if you had to pick your five worst calls against the Chiefs, excluding that one? Maybe you could include that one and tell us where it would rank, but then five other ones I'll give you.
Okay, well that one would definitely be number one. So,
Okay.
uh, yeah, that's terrible. I think being there made it that much worse. I do have a couple honorable mentions that I'm not going to include for various reasons. I'll explain. One is the Kadarius Toney offensive offsides, and I will put that together with the play we discussed about the in the Chiefs Steelers divisional round at the end of the 2016 season, the hold by Fisher on James Harrison. I think
Old, yes.
the reason why I am not including those and they become honorable mention is because I don't think they were bad. I'm not clear that they were bad calls. They were incredibly impactful calls that were rough to see called, but I don't know that they were bad calls, so I can't like include them there. With the Tony one, it he was offside. It's that, and I do feel like on some level when you're committing a penalty, you can't really complain that a penalty was called. Now, is it true that a lot of people line up offsides offensively? It seems to be the case, and according to uh, the coaches, apparently when people are repeatedly lining up offsides, the coaches get warned like, "Hey, 19's lining up offsides. Like, we're gonna start calling this if he doesn't get it straight." And Andy Reid said that didn't happen. So I understand why they were frustrated, but ultimately, when you commit a penalty and they call a penalty, like it's kind of hard to complain. Um,
There were, it's like, sorry, just to follow up on that. I mean, there were like, I think someone did a breakdown of several other plays in that game where he was lined up upsides and it was not called, right?
and
So
like
I sense the frustration.
previous games in the season where Tony was lined up offside, like apparently he had been a serial offender, but they also found like people in other games on other teams lining up offsides too. So it's like it happens. It's
Yeah,
just unfortunate
yeah.
it was called then, but it was a penalty. Uh, my thing, I actually made a short on this just a couple days ago, like in reference to because in the Connecticut Iowa women's basketball game, a Connecticut player, Aaliyah Edwards, committed a moving screen on a crucial play. Connecticut was down one, and they ended up losing the ball, and Iowa won in the Final Four. And I actually compared it to the Tony play because I feel like it's the same idea. Like people commit moving screens all the time in basketball, and they're generally not called. But it was a moving screen, so it's basically my point in the short was whatever you feel about that Tony play, you should feel about this play. You got to be consistent. Like it's one of those situations where this thing isn't called, but it's a penalty, and so when they call the penalty, if it's up to you which way you lean on that kind of thing. So that's why I'm not
Yeah.
including that. And then the Fisher one, like I honestly just don't even know if it was a hold or not. I don't know. I know he slipped. I know Fisher got beat. I don't know if by the rule of the law that's a hold. So I'm not going to include that. And the other one I wasn't
Wait,
going to
can I
include.
follow up? Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead. I want
yeah,
to follow
no.
up on the consistency point. Like, I do feel the pressure, right, to be consistent in my judgments about, plays in different contexts. But I'm not sure I understand where that comes. Like, where does that come? Like, why is there a pressure to be consistent about your judgments in these different contexts, right? Like, I don't watch the game impartially, right? I favor the Steelers. So, like, what would be bad about me being inconsistent, like thinking that that's a penalty when it's on the other, or it should be a penalty when another player on another team does it, but not when the Steelers do it. Like, I'm not sure if I see why it's bad to be inconsistent in that way. Granted, I try to be consistent, but I don't know if I see it.
I think the reason my argument for why it's important to be consistent is that it makes it impossible to have discourse with people that aren't fans if you're not consistent. Because then everybody has like a different frame they're operating from. And yeah, how can you have a proper discussion when people aren't agreeing on the general facts or the frame of the discussion? That's why I feel like it's important.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I guess the counter argument would be the we all have the different frames anyway, right? So maybe the consistency is just going to hide it and make it harder to find. But there will be cases where it shows up, where our bias shows up. But maybe
Oh
that's
yeah,
not true.
that's
Maybe that's not. I don't know.
well, no, I definitely think it is true, but I think it's just that like I always go back. I feel like I make this analogy so much in my life. People that are around me must get so tired of it. But remember when we read the Aeneid in Latin? We should bring that up as an anecdote. But one thing that always struck me from the Aeneid that I bring up still routinely in my life was that the king of Troy, Priam, was made to represent the idea of a futile fight. Like the idea that even though you know you're going to lose at something, it is noble to fight and strive for it. And I feel like that's what I am as far as coming to being unbiased. Like, of course, I'm going to be biased, but I think there's nobility in doing the best you can to try to be as unbiased as you possibly can. It's
That's
the
fair.
fight of King Priam.
That's what it is. Okay. Well, that's a noble way to put it. Man, that motivates me. Okay. Anyway, sorry I
Um,
interrupted you.
so the other honorable mention was we kind of touched on it briefly too in a past episode was the 1997, the end of that season, the playoffs, when Tony Gonzalez caught a pass that he is certain was a touchdown but was called in out of bounds. And honestly, the main reason why I don't put that is like I have not found a good replay angle on that from the 1997 footage. Like I've seen the play multiple times and I can't tell if his feet are down or not, so I can't really call that a bad call. Um, so now to the top five. I didn't actually like rank these as like level of importance. I'll just go in reverse chronological order. Starting with this season, um, the Chiefs played the Packers in a Monday night football game, and we're down 27-19 with about 50 seconds to go in the game. And Mahomes threw a bomb to MVS, and the defender like literally just rode his back right into the ground, and no pass interference was called. It would have been like a spot foul at around the 6 yard line or something, with around 40 seconds to go and us down eight. Could have made things interesting. So and it was a bad call because we're in this whole era of the discourse being about how the game is rigged for the Chiefs. And I feel like the national media was just absolutely lambasting that call. So that was a really bad one. That was a terrible experience.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. It was so recent. It was pretty blatant.
It was funny though. The takes were that like the refs knew that with MVS down there, it wasn't a catchable pass. So that was the. I thought that was at least a funny joke that came from it.
That was a good one.
Uh,
Yeah.
the next one is a year before the 2022 season. This was the Chiefs Raiders game where Travis Kelsey caught 4 touchdown passes on Monday Night Football. We ended up winning the game, but when we were down 17-7 with a minute 13 to go in the second quarter, the Raiders had 3rd and 8 on their own 46, and Chris Jones sacked Derek Carr, stripped him, and because he had the football in his right hand, couldn't brace with both hands as he went down. So they called roughing the passer, and they negated the sack fumble and gave the Raiders the ball in the first down. And that is the first time. It's actually worth watching that YouTube video of that someone has put together like the next several calls that Carl Treffers made in the game after that. And it's the first time where I really felt like a ref was scared of the crowd. Like there's one where his like voice kind of breaks as he's like saying he's like there's no foul. like it's really funny. Like the crowd was banana. I honestly think that call is one of the reasons we won that game because we started out really sluggish. We actually went down 17-0 and we ended up winning that game. It was
And the ref
quite a call.
was afraid of the fans at that point.
Yeah, I really think so. The fans like actually influenced the game. Um, this next one was I feel like it gets forgotten because of how much of a blowout this game became. But in Super Bowl 55, when we lost to the Bucks, uh, they were on our 33-yard line in the second quarter. There's 8 minutes and 2 seconds to go in the second, and they're only up 7-3. Like people forget that the defense actually did okay early on. Like the Bucks are up 7-3. They're driving. Brady throws a pass that gets tipped, and Tyrann Mathieu picks it off. But Charvarius Ward got like a very weak defensive holding call on that play that negated the interception. It was partially the frustration I have is that the call was very weak. Like, and they ended up calling us really tight. That especially that second quarter. Like in the first half, we had like 8 penalties for 95 yards, and they had 1 for 5 yards. And we later in that there was a later drive where we had like 2 pass interference penalties for 42 yards, like including one in the end zone that gave them the ball at the 1 that led to an Antonio Brown touchdown pass reception, I believe. Um, it was just, but that hold call. The other thing that really annoyed me is like that ball was tipped about maybe 2 seconds after the ball was snapped. Like, and it's pretty bang bang about whether the ball had actually been tipped when the contact that I'm not even sure was a hold was called. Like, it was just so ticky tack, and to come in that stage, like they ended up scoring a touchdown to go up 14-3, and then they were up 21-6 at halftime. And not that I think the Chiefs would have won that game. Like, I'll always say you never know with Mahomes, but man, if we had the ball down 7-3 in that game, middle of the second quarter, like at least maybe it would have been close for longer, and maybe they could have figured something out. Probably not, but that was rough.
Yeah, I mean, there are like high leverage points of a game, right? Where a play like that going differently, like the defense gets a lot more rest, they're not worn out. Um, I don't know how much to read into like momentum, but you know, you could imagine that giving the offense some momentum or some excitement that they kind of lacked for a lot of that game, right? So yeah, you could
Right.
imagine that making a significant difference.
And definitely there was an element by the end of that half of the defense like losing their cool a little bit with the penalty calls, which I wonder if they had kept it together a little bit more. I don't know. I do think that unfortunately that game was just a combination of the offensive line and the shell coverages that were about to flummox Mahomes the next season. I think those two things combined made it just that was a really tough task. So,
Mhm.
I don't know where that game would have gone, but you never know. If Mahomes injected life, you never know what would have happened. The next one, the 2018 season, at the end of that season, the AFC Championship game, we played the Patriots as another Brady complaint. Um, We were up 21-17. So we had gone down 14 nothing at halftime. We had already come back to take the lead, and now there is uh, 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and the Patriots are driving. They had second and 7 on their own 28. And so we really, like, a stop here would have been huge. We force an incomplete pass, but Chris Jones is called for roughing the passer on a play where he is trying to like swipe at the ball over a defender, and he comes down and hits Brady on the shoulder, and they called him a hit to the head, and he ended up getting called for roughing the passer. To be completely fair to the Patriots, they were about to have a third down, and it feels like Tom Brady was like a million for a million on third down in that game. So maybe they would have converted, but that was a very tough play at a high leverage time when we had come back in that game and had the lead. And man, if we had, I don't think we ever got the ball with the lead in that game. And if we had the ball up 21-17, like Mahomes was just on fire in that second half, that might have led to us going to the Super Bowl. And then finally, this one's a little more off the beaten path too. This is way back in 2014. It's just one of the most annoying calls that I remember. The 2014 Chiefs team went 9-7 and missed the playoffs. It's the only time we haven't made the playoffs under Andy Reid. And we were in the middle of a really annoying losing streak. We had gotten back to 7-3 and then lost two in a row, and we were playing in Arizona. And we were down 17-14 with 5:25 to go in the fourth, and we were at the Cardinals' 30-yard line. And Travis Kelce caught a pass for about 12 yards. He gets hit and starts losing the ball. Then, like, comes down, rolls over onto his back, and, like, has the ball, but the defender starts, like, raking it out. And they ended up calling it they called it a complete pass, and we were huddling, and then the Cardinals challenged it, and they ended up calling it a fumble. And, like, I mean, I don't know. The things that get counted as possession these days, like you have to have the ball for like half a millisecond. Blake Bell like barely had the ball and got it knocked out from him against, I want to say it was at the Broncos or the Chargers this year at home. And they called that a catch fumble. Like Kelsey had the ball with his entire back on the ground or like rolling over, and the ball gets raked out. I mean, I don't know. The whole possession thing in the NFL is so inconsistent, and the fact that they not only called that a fumble, which like whatever, but they overturned catch to fumble based on the complete chaos was infuriating to me. And we ended up losing that game, falling to 7-6, and then we ended up going 9-7 and missing the playoffs.
So their justification for calling that a fumble was that the ball was in the process of coming out or something before he was down. Is that
Yeah, so
was
he
that the,
he definitely was losing the ball as he was going. He had it in his right arm. It came out, and then he's coming down and like pivoting, and he gains control of the ball, but I guess not by the ref definition of control, like not long enough, and then rolls on his back with the ball in his hands. And as he's rolling on his back, the defender rakes his arm through, and Kelsey's arms like hands like come like this, and the ball comes out. But he's like on his back with what I definitely feel like 2024 parlance that is possession, because we've kind of really gone to the fact that like possession happens really fast now. I guess in 2014 that was not yet possession, but I remember it was a confusing enough play that when they challenged it, I was like, what are they challenging? Like I didn't even have any idea what they were challenging. And I was so confident, like, oh, Bruce Arians is an idiot. Like, this is never going to stand. And then they overturned it. And I was like, what? What just happened? Like, it
yeah,
was
I hate
very confusing.
those are some of the dumb those are I can't summon any of those instances right now, but I know those cases where someone challenges and you're thinking I have no idea what they're challenging here. They're not going to win, and then they win, and it's like hugely impactful for you. It's like, I don't know. Those are frustrating.
And this is where bias comes into it, too. Like, doesn't it feel like, it feels like the most annoying coaches are the ones like, I've always found Bruce Arians, well, not when he was the Steelers offensive coordinator, but I didn't really know his personality then. I just find him really annoying. I find him annoying as a broadcaster. I found him annoying as a coach, and I've had like annoying times with him. Like he was the Bucks coach when they beat us in the Super Bowl, and it. I don't know. All fans think all reporters are against their team, but I think the one reporter who I feel like doesn't want the Chiefs to win is Bruce Arians. Whenever he's on the CBS broadcast, is just always pointing out like, "Well, did that really work out?" Like, the ref should have done that. And I'm just like, "Oh my god!" Like, relax.
Um, yeah, I gotta think of some of these examples, but I know the kind of play you're talking about there, and those are some of the worst. Um, um, well, I think maybe should we take a break and then I have one more Chiefs sort of set of questions for you. Um,
Okay, sounds good. And we're back. We're still in the state of the Chiefs.
yeah, I have one more question. It's not really the current state of the Chiefs. I mean, vaguely current. Um, but we had talked recently about some of the expectation that Mahomes will eventually throw for 700 yards or 600 yards, maybe 700 yards in a game. And we had mentioned a couple of his like really good like half performances, having like over 300 yards and a half a couple times, which I went to try to look up. Like what are the highest or the stats on most yards thrown in a half, and see how many games he has on that list. Apparently, StatMuse, which is like my go-to for stats, doesn't have halves or quarters in a reliable
Oh,
way yet. So that was disappointing. But it did raise a different question for me, which was just how many of the highest single game yardage totals in Chiefs history does Mahomes have? And of the top 25, he has 12, which honestly I kind of expected more. But it's still, it's like essentially half, which is quite good. Um, and I wanted to see how many of these games you might remember or know just based on the stat lines.
I feel like this is
Um,
gonna be very hard.
yeah, this might be. So if this is too hard, we'll see. I mean, this will tell me something. You see, the thing, I think I could identify a fair number of, well, of the very best games that passing games. I feel like I might. I don't know. This is gonna be hard. Yeah, let's just let's just see what happens. The first one maybe won't be as hard because it's all right. So I'm gonna give you the quarterback's stat line here, and
Okay.
you tell me if you know which quarterback did it or when they did it or anything like that. So uh, 504 passing yards, uh, 39 for 53, two touchdowns, two interceptions.
I I think this is Elvis Gerback.
Yes, it is. This is Elvis going back. Do you know when?
2000.
Yep. 2000 against.
I just remember him becoming the first Chief to throw for 500 yards. At least I think he was the first Chief to throw for. I know he threw for 500 yards in a game in 2000. Um, I know he played really, really well against the Rams in a game in 2000. I don't know if this is that game though. Um, is
This
this?
is not the Rams.
No. Okay, I know because I remember we put up like 50 on the Rams. I don't think I'm gonna know who they played. No.
This is the Raiders.
Oh,
And
great! That's awesome.
well, yeah, they lost though, 49 to
Oh,
31. But yeah, 504 yards is nice. Okay, well that was impressive. Okay. Yeah, I think according to StatMuse, he's the only quarterback to have thrown for 500 yards in Chiefs history.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Um, all right. How about this one? 478 yards,
This is Mahomes.
33.
Yeah,
Do you know which game already?
that's against the Rams
Yeah.
in
Okay.
2018. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Good.
I
I
think
think
six touchdowns and two or
three
three picks.
picks. Yeah. Yeah. 33 for 46. All right. Doing well so far. This one is surprise. Well, I'm giving you information here. I'm a bit surprised. Okay, so 469 yards, 33 for 53, four touchdowns, no interceptions.
Hmm. It doesn't stand out. I guess I'm gonna have to guess Trent Green.
See, that seems like a good guess, but it's not. It's Matt Castle.
Whoa! I did
What a
not remember
game!
this one.
Yeah, it's from 2010 against the Broncos. Um,
Wow.
that's a nice game
Was it in Denver or in Kansas City?
in Denver, uh,
In the
and they lost 49 to 29.
Oh, I remember. We got yeah. Oh, I didn't know he threw for that many yards. And he had four touchdowns. I remember Kyle Orton shredded us in that game. I didn't know that Matt Castle threw for that many yards. Wow.
Was it a lot of maybe it was a lot of garbage time or something?
Yeah, we were not in that game for much of that game. The Broncos just were doing whatever they want. That was the game where Todd Haley got mad at Josh McDaniels for running up the score. Like he like gave him a there's like a picture of him like sternly like pointing his finger at
Oh
him.
yeah, kind of
Like
vaguely remember that.
yeah.
Okay. There's one here from 1964 that I won't I won't
Wait,
ask you
so all
about.
three is 19 is it Len Dawson?
Uh, Let me see. Um,
Wow, 1964 throwing for
yeah, it
over
is Len
400 yards.
Dawson. Yeah, yeah. Six touchdowns, three picks. That's
Wow.
for 1964. That is quite
Did
a performance.
yeah, did we at least win that one? I feel like our top 3 have all been losses.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
49-39 versus Denver.
nice.
Um, a lot of 49-point games in here. Um, let's see. How about I'm gonna sort of just pick randomly now from this list. Well, maybe not totally randomly. 400 yards. Uh, this is you're not. How would you get this? Anyway, if you can get this, this is incredible. 400 yards, 27 for 45, three touchdowns, no picks. How would one
Uh,
get?
I don't know. Well, I wait, 27 for 45,
Yeah,
400 yards, 3 touch. So that's not enough for no. Okay. Mm, if it's someone that I
here's
wouldn't get, yeah.
no. Let me tell you. Like, I'll give you a slight hint. You almost certainly remember this game because I remember this game. So I'm sure as a Chiefs fan, you remember this game.
Can this be regular season and playoffs or just regular season?
Um, that's a good question. Looks like I can't. I don't know. This is regular season. I will tell you that it is from the regular season. I don't know if this list includes playoffs or not.
Remember this game? Hmm.
All right. If I tell you it's from 2003,
Oh well,
now
then
I'm
it's Trent
asking
Green.
more about the game. Do you know the
Wait,
game?
2003. Oh, is this week 2 when we beat the Steelers?
No, it's not week two.
No, no, because
It
that was
is.
more of a Priest Holmes game. Yeah, we wouldn't have thrown that much in that game.
I went to
Hmm.
that game. Yeah, that was not a fun game. This is versus Green Bay. Uh, 40 to 34
Oh,
field goal one.
yeah, that was when we won in overtime. Oh, I remember that game.
Was
I
this
didn't
the?
know.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
This was the game where I think we went down 14-0. We're playing in Green Bay. We came back. We had like Jerome Woods had a pick six late in the game that helped us. We went into overtime and Amon Green fumbled. I think Mike Maslowski forced the fumble, and then we threw a touchdown. Green threw like a 40-yard touchdown to Eddie Kennison, I think, down the right sideline to win. I think that was the game.
Okay, you remember more about this than I did Dante Hall have a return in this one?
No, this was the first game he didn't.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
he actually got tripped up by the punter. Like he had one, but like he was had the punter literally lunged and like clipped his ankles. He was the man to beat. Yeah, this was the first game he didn't. He had got touchdowns in the last 4 games before that.
Okay. Well, that's a good one. I remember that being a fun game to watch. stretch, and the Chiefs were 6-0 after that game.
Yeah, if you remember, this was the game that we had a CIS event after this game at the Corn Maze. And I remember at that event, we were watching like the Steelers play the Broncos in Denver or something. That was that day.
Yep, I remember that one. And that was the day we fell to 2-4, I think, because whoever kicked field goals for the Broncos back then made a field goal. But I remember in particular that was a play where Jerome Bettis scored a touchdown because his knee was not on the ground; it was on like the leg of one of the offensive linemen who must have been in some pain at that point. Uh, but he was just like, "This is actually an interesting idea. Could you just lay down and have someone like crawl on so they're not touching the field, but just like
I
crawl
guess
on the
so.
offensive lineman?"
Yeah.
uh, yeah, totally new strategy for running the football here. um, anyway, all right. I'm gonna see if any other of these games are like stand out to me. Um, how about ooh, 446, 36 for 51, 3 touchdowns, no picks.
I think this is a Mahomes game. Um,
Yes, it is.
why is 446? Three touchdowns, though. Was this three? Was this. Was this the Jaguars game we were talking about?
Not
No?
that one.
Was. Yeah.
This is a. You want it? You want the answer?
Yeah.
It's the Titans at Tennessee. They lost 35-32 in 2019.
Oh, yeah. That was another. This was his first game back after he dislocated his knee. This game,
Ah,
we missed a field goal and had a field goal blocked and had a fumble return for a touchdown. It was just like a comedy of errors. But Mahomes made one of his best. This is why I remember the stat line, the number 446, because I watched highlights from this game because of Mahomes threw a jump pass to McCole Hardman. And like he literally was just standing in the pocket, saw Hardman and jumps and throws it to him, and Hardman just runs through the entire secondary. He looks like the fastest man in the world on that play. It's so weird to watch. Like Jim Nance when he catches the ball has no idea that he's going to score a touchdown, and then he just runs by everybody.
um, okay, yeah. Well, what's interesting here as I look at this is that Mahomes has 3 games with 446 yards exactly, and two
Whoa!
of them are against the Titans. um, he
Was
also
one
had
from
one in
2022.
yeah,
Yeah,
20
but
to 17.
he threw a lot of passes, right? In that,
Oh yeah,
yeah, it was a ton of
uh,
passes to get to 446.
68 passes. Yeah,
Yeah, and he also ran for a lot of yards. He basically just was the entire offense that game. I remember.
68 passes and a lot of passes in one
Yeah,
game.
yeah. It was not like an efficient throwing game. He just volume. We needed every pass.
The other one was against the Jets in 2020.
Oh, that was a good. That was a 5 touchdown game.
Yep,
That
35
was
to
a very good
19
game.
or to 9 rather. Good. Okay. Well, we could go on with this, but I don't know how entertaining this is for for other people. It's definitely entertaining for me to see how much you remember about all this. But anyway, that is fun. And I think you acquitted yourself well there. That was um,
It's
just knowing the quarterback stat line is pretty impressive.
that was exceptionally challenging. like you hear the numbers and it's like
But you were pretty good there, I gotta say.
especially because they're like I for as much as I pride myself in knowing about the Chiefs, there are very large time periods that I have enormous gaps of knowledge. I would say between like 1975 and 1995, like I know some things but not a lot. So a lot could have happened in there. I mean, we weren't very good during that stretch, so well, 91 to 95 we were okay, but so
Yeah.
there could have been stuff from there and I would have had no idea.
I should have clarified that most of these, at least, yeah, most of these are from your time when you would have been paying more attention. But there are a few that are, yeah, like '64. Probably didn't watch that one. uh, okay. Well, it is interesting the things that we keep in our memories.
Yeah.
um, all right, that's all my questions about the Chiefs right now. Is there
All
anything else
right.
that you wanted to bring up about the Chiefs?
Well, I was excited that we did re-sign Mike Dana, which was a big move for us. And so we kind of knocked out. We talked about how I would feel really good about things if we just got like a average starter at wide receiver, left tackle, and defensive end. So we got one at defensive end. We'll see what happens at wide receiver and left tackle. I'm getting more and more of an inclination that for left tackle, we're just gonna wait until we're gonna see if one falls to us in the draft, and if one doesn't, we're gonna sign someone off the street like Donovan Smith and just plug them in.
Hmm.
Not quite sure what we're thinking at wide receiver. I mean, we're clearly going to draft someone, but beyond that, maybe we're comfortable. I mean, I did hear the point made, and I agree with it, that like Hollywood Brown and Rasheed Rice together is comparable in quality to Juju Smith Schuster and Marquez Valdez Scantling from 2022, and we were the number one offense in the league that year. So maybe they're just like, we'll draft someone, and that's good enough. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, won the Super Bowl last year with probably worst wide receiver core. So
Yeah. Although I don't want to go through that again if we can avoid it.
yeah.
All right. So, as with the state of the Chiefs, most of the state of the Steelers is not that pertinent as regarding like what's actually happening right now with the Steelers. It's more just an overall uh, set of questions. First, I would want to say that I was thinking about the fact that you know there have been two Steeler head coaches since you have been following the team, and they both had very iconic looks. I think of like the Tomlin's more just either the cool look with like the aviators, or just the intense his intense face, and then Bill Cowher I think of like the frown where he like puts out his lip.
Yeah.
So, how would you compare the iconic looks of the coaches that you have had, and what do you prefer?
Well, I'm gonna be biased, I guess, but I mean, when I look at Mike Tomlin, I just like it. Just feels like there's like an entire world behind that face, right? He's just like the expressions he uses, the things he's. I don't know. Somehow, he's so interesting to me. So Bill Cowher, fantastic, right? Like awesome coach. I have nothing bad to say about his coaching, or I don't really know much about him as a person, but I don't think I was old enough or whatever to appreciate that there might be a lot going on behind that face right there. But with Tomlin, somehow he just like invites that, at least for me. Like somehow I like it's like, oh, what's he thinking? I was like, is he being genuine here or not? And just all these questions uh, sort of force themselves on me when I look at him somehow. So I definitely prefer any of Tomlin's expressions. Uh, it's going to be a sad day when he's no longer the Steelers coach, but he's I don't know. There's just yeah. I mean, he has this kind of like persona, as it were, of like being in control a lot, and you can sometimes
Mm.
see it break, and that's really interesting to me too. um, and I guess probably a lot of coaches have this kind of thing, but yeah, it just I'm just like endlessly entertained by watching him, whether he's in a press conference or on the sideline or whatever. Uh, Speaking of which, stuff, one of those sideline plays where he was that just reminded me of the Jacoby Jones return against with the Ravens when Mike Tomlin was like on the field. Uh, yeah, that's a good question there. Like, was that intentional or not? I don't know. But that's another one where it's like, yeah, how do you like? Maybe that just adds to the mystique
The mis-
of what he's really intending or what he's really thinking. Yeah, I don't know. He is one of the main reasons I am enthralled by the Steelers. To be honest, when he leaves, it'll be interesting to see if I'm still a Steelers fan.
It is interesting. Feel like you kind of danced around this idea in your description, but like, how much do you feel like your liking of Tomlin versus Cower is about them, and how much is about how different you are as a person now compared to when you were rooting for the Cower Steelers?
Yeah, that might be true. And like, it's not like I've watched a lot of Bill Cowher's press conferences or listened to a lot of the things he said.
Although he is a studio analyst at CBS, I don't know how much you've seen
It's
of him
true,
talking.
but and maybe this is just the difference in their personalities, but like Tomlin clearly puts thought into sort of the way he could phrase things or the appropriate things to say in different circumstances in a way that just for me invites speculation. Whereas not the cow, as an analyst on CBS, I don't know how much part of your job is to invite speculation about what you're really thinking. I think you're supposed to be upfront about it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that again, I don't know if that's the person in both cases or if it's their job or whatever, but somehow I find so much more to think about when I watch Mike Tomlin.
Well, and Bill Coward does tend to be somewhat milk toast with his analysis. I feel like young people now must look at Bill Cower like, I feel like our generation probably looked at someone like Terry Bradshaw being like, you were really good at this, like, like actually, wow,
Yeah,
like I would not get that from watching you talk about this.
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, there's only been like one or two times where he's given like analysis that I thought was insight. I mean, I don't watch him a ton, so maybe I mean, one or two times is not saying much, but of the times that I've watched him, which is very few, give analysis, uh, only a very small proportion. I think, oh, that's actually insightful. And again, in that case, I can't even tell if it's just because, oh, I have a sort of history with him that other teams don't have, or other fans of other teams don't have. Um, I'm just more charitable about reading his comments or something. But yeah, I think milk toast is a good description of a lot of his takes.
And I don't know how much of that is the CBS studio show itself. I feel like these days studio shows are made like there are too many people on the panel. No one gets to talk for that long. I feel like the only one, at least in CBS, that comes across as interesting is Boomer Esiason. I'm always interested in what he has to
Mm,
say, but that's about it. Yeah, I don't know that the setup. So how much of it is Cower's fault and how much is the setup fault? I have no idea.
yeah, but okay. Like, can I turn this back to you? Like, what do you does Tomlin strike you as interesting, or is it just me? And given like I've watched him enough, and like is this is just to I guess this is to reframe your question to me, like whether is it me that's changed and that therefore finds Tomlin more interesting, or is it them themselves? Like, do you think Tomlin is as interesting as I seem to think he is?
No, I think so. And I think to me, one of the reasons is that Tomlin is someone who is unabashed about his personality. Like, he, I feel like, says what he thinks. At least he attempts to answer questions in a way that, for example, like Andy Reid appears to have zero. Like, I find Andy Reid interesting because I know him zero. Like, he puts on this face, and I know that's not actually him based on how everybody talks about him and based on how creative his offenses are and stuff. But he talks like someone who has nothing to say ever. And so that his interest is in the complete vacuum that he creates. Like, but Tomlin gives you a taste, you know, you can actually see it and you can see why people are interested in him and why people follow him. Like, I don't know from personal viewing why people are this invested in Andy Reid. I don't even know why he's considered so smart besides watching the plays. But nothing he says, like at least Bill Belichick has said smart things about football. Like I don't remember Andy Reid saying anything at all that was like, you know, like he just says very basic stuff, and that's by design. Like that's how. But Tomlin will like you can see why people want to play for him. Like it's very clear in a way that I think more so than any other coach that I have seen in the league.
Yeah, I think that's right. But even right, so he does give you a taste of sort of I think what he's thinking. But then I think there are times when he doesn't, or when he's sort of intentionally misleading about it, and gives you like an expression to latch onto or whatever, and think that that's interesting, whereas what he really thinks is something else, right? So for a long time, he used to talk more about like popcorn plays, right? Like we didn't make the sort of the big time players making big time plays, right? In big games, right? That was one of his sort of recurring phrases at one point, and it's been a while since he's used that phrase, and some of the ways he describes what we're looking for now makes me think that either he's changed his opinion about what like how the team should win games, or his philosophy has always been something different, right? But he talks now about just wanting to more. Part of the reason he said we fired Canada last year is because he wanted to sort of just generate more consistent offense, right? And that's not he didn't say like big time plays more frequently. He said, we just need to be moving the ball better, essentially, and make it easier to win the games. So I don't know. I mean, there, I think that's the kind of difference in perspective that also like I can't tell if his perspective has changed or whether he's always thought this and just not wanting to give too much insight into what he really thinks at other times. Uh, but yeah, all sorts of. And maybe it's just like a totally boring and totally mundane a question to other people, but somehow it just is so interesting to me, like what he actually thinks and what his philosophy is.
Well, and I think that makes it more interesting. The fact that he gives you a taste, because you know from the fact that he's a really good coach that there's clearly a lot he's not telling you. Like every good coach has a lot that they are doing and understanding and thinking about that they don't tell you. But you can't even speculate with someone like Andy Reid because but with Tomlin, you see some of it, and I think it's, to me, it's the charisma that's intoxicating. Like, because I wouldn't necessarily know that he's a good X's and O guy, except that his teams win, right?
Mm. Yeah.
But the charisma is very appealing. Like, you understand why people care about him. But there's so many, like, for example, like, I don't know, we had Romeo Cornell before Andy Reid. Again, people love Romeo Cornell around the league. Players do. And I could not understand it. Like, he just, like, very similarly to Andy Reid, like, it didn't seem like he ever said anything. And I was just like, what does he actually like? Like, I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember having any opinion of his personality, essentially. Uh, with Andy Reid, I feel like you get some like like he likes barbecue, right? I know that about him,
Yeah,
right? So there are some facts that one knows, but not really football related facts, I guess.
right.
Um,
Yeah, he does like cracking jokes. He's actually like kind of funny when he talks about stuff, but he's clearly holding a lot back. Like even when he does interviews and stuff, there's clearly a lot more there. There's the reasons why people are so they just fall in line behind him. They seem like they'll do anything for him. So,
mm, yeah.
all right. So this next question, it's kind of cheating because it's motivated by a Chiefs situation, but I made a Steelers question about it. I don't know how much you've been like keeping track of Kansas City local politics, but the Chiefs had the Kansas City Jackson County had a ballot measure to extend like the 5/8 cent. I believe it's 5/8 cent. And here I am talking about stuff I don't actually. 5/8 of a percent tax, I think, is the actual. It's not 5/8 of a cent. I think it's 5/8 of a percent tax on certain kinds of sales. Here again, I should have looked into this more. But there's a tax that they were going to vote to extend to help renovations of Arrowhead Stadium and to help the Royals. They kind of package it together, build a new stadium in downtown Kansas City, and the voters of Jackson County voted no. And so, of course, that brought about a bunch of speculation, like, are the teams going to move? Are they, Are the Chiefs going to go to Kansas? Are they, because of course the Chiefs are going to say we're going to keep all our options open because they want as much leverage. I think people that know way more than I do about this stuff say that anything's possible, but they envision the Chiefs staying in the city of Kansas City. But it made me start thinking about like, would I would them going to Kansas affect my fandom, or would them going somewhere else like? And so I decided to ask you, if the Steelers left Pittsburgh, would that affect your fandom? And if not, what like how far away would they have to go, or like at what point would they get to the point that it would affect your fandom, if it's a distance, or maybe they move somewhere else and then a new team is started in Pittsburgh. Like, where do you feel like that limit would be where you would abandon the Steelers?
Yeah, that is that is that's a tough question. I mean, right. So for the Chiefs, if they just moved across like this, but they're still in like the Kansas City area, right? I am like, would that make it? That wouldn't make a difference, right? To your fandom, or would it?
It wouldn't. Honestly, I wouldn't like it. Weirdly enough, like I feel like I associate so much with Missouri. Like I wouldn't have thought until it became like an actual possibility. I was like, I'd rather they stay in Missouri. Actually, like I feel like there's a little bit of Missouri loyalty, but like I don't think I would stop rooting for them or care any less about them. But I would not prefer it.
Yeah, yeah. It's so hard for me to imagine the Steelers moving out of Pittsburgh. So I'm gonna think, like, try to get in the mindset where, like, yep, uh, Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium is needs renovation. I mean, it does need renovations, I guess, but um, and they're not going to pay for it in Pittsburgh, so we're leaving. Where are we going? Uh,
Syracuse.
Syracuse. See, I have my mom's family is from Syracuse, so I have
Oh,
like
really?
I like Syracuse. I would not mind that. I mean, it would be strange, but yeah, I don't think I would mind Syracuse. It'd be really weird though. And it's not like that unfathomable, right? Syracuse doesn't have a professional football team. They're a small town, but they're not tiny. They could. I don't know. That would be interesting. I think I would. I think I would just still follow them. I don't know. I mean, it would. I would. I think it would really depend on continuity of the people, right? If they're, you know, and this I think is just connected with like my fandom in general, right? I don't know if this is idiosyncratic, but I think that uh, a lot of the reason I like the Steelers, well, I don't even know, like a lot of my justification for still being a Steelers fan is that I am attached to the people that play or coach on the Steelers, right? And if there were enough change at one time in that respect, like a lot of different people came in, like new coaches, new players, etc., then I would feel very, I think, little attachment to them. Um,
Wait. So
uh,
then let me pose this hypothetical to you. What if the Steelers, in their current form, moved to Syracuse, but they entirely changed their uniform? They're red and green now. They're not even called the Steelers anymore. They're they're the Christmas trees, and, and they're in Syracuse, and they still have Tomlin as the coach. Dick LeBeau comes back as like an advisor. Ben Roethlisberger is the offensive coordinator, and then they restart the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise with the same logo and everything in Pittsburgh with an entirely new regime. Who would you root for then?
that's that's really tough. I think, yeah, it's just pulling my fandom at the seams or whatever part. um, I think I would be very conflicted uh, by yeah. I guess there is a little bit of just like that uniform and that logo that, and being in Pittsburgh. I mean, that's at least originally why being in Pittsburgh originally why I liked them. Um, in that situation, I don't know. I think I might. I think I might follow Christmas trees or whatever. I mean, that's such a stupid. If they were the second Christmas trees, I mean, that might inform the decision if they were that stupid. But supposing it wasn't that bad, I might follow. I might stick with them. Like, when does one change one's allegiances? If not then, right? I think that might be it. I think that might be it. Yeah, I'd do it.
Would there be any part of you that would be mad at that franchise for having left Pittsburgh? Because I
Yeah,
feel like that is what draws a lot of people away. They get like so mad that they left.
yeah. I don't know if I'd be mad. It would definitely like undercut a lot of my somehow being from Pittsburgh is it's one of the reasons, right? And I guess I didn't really
Yeah.
appreciate that until this conversation right now. But I really thought like the driving force of my fandom was the people, and maybe the location was like what started it, but what sustains my fandom is the people. But I think that there is something about it being from Pittsburgh that also sustains it.
Because this is like the dilemma of the, I guess, early or mid 2000s Browns fan. Like the Browns went to Baltimore, became the Ravens, and then they started a new Browns franchise. And they watched the Ravens win Super Bowl. Like,
Yeah,
that's got to be real rough.
it must be so strange. I don't. It's it's yeah, a very different kind of fandom or experience of fandom.
All right. Well, let's take a break, and then I have a quiz for you, or a trivia game that we will
Oh,
play on the other
fantastic.
side of the break.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're back. All right. So for our final Steelers portion of this segment, I decided to go through, the draft's coming up and it's time for draft takes. So I went through and I have picked out 10 different draft takes from the past that either apply to people who were drafted by the Steelers or are current members of the Steelers, but were drafted by a different organization. And some of them are very detailed, some of them are not so much, which will make it hard. But I'm going to read the takes, and if you're unable to get a question, like to kind of narrow it, I'll try to give you like a 5 year time range in which this could have occurred, and we'll see what you think.
Okay.
So let's start with this draft take from NFL.com. Here is what they said about the player. He's undersized and will initially struggle with the physical aspects of the game at the next level. He generally has lined up in the slot and would have trouble with his release against some of the physical cornerbacks at the next level if he lines up on the line of scrimmage. He's explosive off the line and will show good burst out of his cuts, but needs work in his hard cuts and underneath routes. He has decent hands, but it looks like the ball gets big on him at times and he traps too many passes in his body. Who might that describe?
Um, well, I would say a prominent Steelers wide receiver. Which one? Is that Antonio Brown?
That is Antonio Brown. That is correct.
Okay.
All right, so huge out of the gate. Um, Next one, blank, like the player's name, misses plays because he's out of position. He does not read keys well and diagnose plays out of he does not read keys well and diagnose. He plays out of control and lacks great change of direction. Does not have great playing speed and range.
That's tough because I don't even know really if we're talking offense or defense here. Probably offense. Reading keys, but it could be defense. Oh.
Unfortunately, most of them are like this. It's not going to be so clear what the position is based on.
Uh, can you can I ask for a second read?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
can you
sure.
read it again?
Yeah. He misses plays because he's out of position. He does not read keys well and diagnose. He plays out of control and lacks great change of direction. does not have a great playing speed and range.
So is this like how big of a snippet in the report is this? Is this a
Oh, it's
selective snippet or is
it's
this like the
selective.
take?
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm.
Most of these are fairly selective. I tried though not to, because sometimes they break them by like strengths and weaknesses. I felt like it was a little cheap to just like go in the weaknesses, so I go in like the summary.
Yeah. Uh, oh, maybe maybe I'm thinking maybe a linebacker. Um, but I have really low confidence in which linebacker. Maybe James Harrison.
It's not James Harrison. What if I told you this was done in the range between 2003 and 2007?
I'm still thinking linebacker, but I'm trying to think of like a good like a linebacker from back then. When did we get Clark Hagen's? um, maybe I shouldn't be thinking. This is tough. This, uh, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna give up on that one.
This is Troy Polamalu.
Troy Polamalu. Wow. Okay, playing out of control makes sense. I get it.
All right, this is probably the hardest one. I'm already like regretting taking this short of a snippet, but this is from Bleacher Report, so that can give you a hint on timeline. Drafting blank was by far the worst pick in the draft.
uh,
How
well,
about this? I'll give you a hint on this because it's so vague. Part of the reason I found this so funny was because it's not like a premium pick was used on this person.
okay,
Although it can still apply to a lot of Steelers.
but they
And
but they're saying this about like a third, fourth, something round pick.
yeah, definitely not a day one pick. And I'll give you the time range is between 2011 and 2014. And reiterate
Um,
that they don't have to be drafted by the Steelers, but if they're not drafted by the Steelers, then they are current Steelers.
that seems relevant. Okay. Well, presumably it's relevant, so that should inform my current Steelers from that range. Who do we even have that's from that range? Definitely the worst pick of the draft
By far. Was by far the
by
worst pick in the
far.
draft.
This is this is enjoyable, but I have no idea who this is going to be.
Yeah,
Uh,
I feel like this one is too hard. You know what would make my life? It would make my life if there's one person listening to this, like screaming at their phone, being like, I know who this is.
yeah. Uh, I hope someone does, or a bot maybe. A bot
A
probably
bot,
that's listening to this.
a bot has
Yeah, I don't
scanned the
know
whole
who's
internet.
this.
This is Russell Wilson.
Oh, okay.
In
That makes
2012
okay
was
now. Yeah. I don't feel like I've like updated my roster. I didn't even like remember for a second that he was on the Steelers. I was like, who do we even have that old that we didn't draft? Of course, it's Russell Wilson. Okay, yeah.
this is about two players, but it's really the importance is one player. If you get either of the players, I'll count it as being right. If you get the second player, I'll be like amazed. But um, these two players are upside guys who won't have much of an impact provided they make it any at all while they're rookies.
Why would they be evaluating two players at once?
I wouldn't ascribe too much logic to the reasoning
Okay.
behind how they present things.
uh, um, I mean, my first thought was, well, maybe they play the same position, uh, and so
They
maybe
play the
it's
same
like,
side of the ball.
can you read it again?
Yeah, it is. These two players are upside guys who won't have much of an impact provided they make any at all as rookies.
Is Marquise Pouncey one of them?
No.
No.
Oh, you know what? They don't play the same side of the ball, actually. My
Okay.
bad. I
Well,
gave you false
that's
information.
it didn't actually like
I had to
impact my
look.
guess
I had
that
to
much.
look the less well-regarded one up.
uh, how about I'm gonna go dig deep here. Jason Worlds.
No, the
No, okay.
no. Um, what if I told you it was between 2002 and 2006?
Ike Taylor.
This is Ben Roethlisberger and Ricardo Coakley.
Oh, Ricardo Coakley. Wow, that name has not. I have not heard that name in a long time. Wow.
I think
Okay,
they
so
were
the one
put
that was
together just
clearly
because they were consecutive picks, like first and second round.
okay. Uh, Now I get the sort of point of highlighting that will not make a big impact as a rookie. Okay. Well, Coakley didn't do much.
Yeah, they were right about one.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought Coakley was a running back. I had to look him up while you were thinking, and I was like, oh no, he was not a running back.
Was he a corner?
Yeah, he was a corner.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But wow, that's a deep dive.
Okay, this is the last one that I think will be really hard because the other ones at least have more text, so it might be get a little easier after this one. Um, this one is from Bleacher Report again. I think that in the end, we might be talking about blank being the steal of the draft.
I feel like this is the kind of comment that one reads occasionally, and so maybe I'm talking myself into thinking that I might know it. Um, but I don't even know who I remember reading this about. Um, Steal the draft, huh? So probably not a super high pick, although it could have been. Thinking like third or fourth. This is a hard game.
Yeah, this is a very hard game,
I mean, it's fun though.
especially with these like very limited snippets that don't tell you anything about position or anything about. I
Yeah,
should have been a little more detailed.
steal the draft. How about
You also want to think
he?
about why it would be fun for me to have this player be the steal of the
Yeah,
draft.
like clearly not a steal, right? A huge bust. Jarvis Jones.
It's a good guess. It's not Jarvis Jones.
I don't know who is it.
It's Limas Swede.
Ah, yes, Linus. Yeah,
Uh,
maybe I kind of vaguely. Oh, maybe he is one of the people I remember reading Steal the Draft about. Anyway.
all right. This next one. Blank will require additional seasoning to make a mark in the pro game. A better tester than football player at this stage of his development. Lacks toughness to work the middle of the field. Must prove he's willing to work to assimilate a playbook and learn the finer points of the game.
It'd be funny if that were Heinz Ward.
It's not Heinz Ward, but
Not
I
Heinz
while
Ward.
looking up, I couldn't find Heinz Ward draft stuff because he was drafted so long ago. But
Yeah.
I found out he was drafted by the Miami Marlins in baseball.
I
I
think I
don't,
maybe knew that. Yeah, that's familiar. He also
I
like
don't
doesn't have an ACL or something odd.
Yeah, he was missing an ACL. That's why he fell to the third round, I think. Otherwise, he was maybe an end of the first round prospect.
Oh wow. Yeah. Um, Presumably a wide receiver. Uh, but which one? I mean, maybe it's just accurate. Like, how about Mike Wallace?
That's a good guess. It's not Mike Wallace.
Okay, who is it?
So we're at the right time frame. It's Martavis Bryant.
Okay, no, that's not a bad evaluation. I feel like.
Yeah, and I didn't want all of them to be like ironic. Otherwise, I thought it clearly like when you're making this test, you don't, or at least I didn't. I was worried about like giving you too many hints, and now I'm reading it. I'm like, this doesn't give you anything. uh, all right, but I will still doggedly push through. We have
Yeah,
four
let's do
more.
it.
All right, this next one. I think he's Bill Cowher's kind of player. What jumps out at you in his film is his aggressiveness and mobility for a big man.
Wait, so are these all like evaluations after the draft? Like when we drafted
Mm,
them?
yeah, I think so. I
Okay,
think
so
they're
then James
they're.
Harrison was a stupid guess, right? Because we did not draft. Okay.
That's
uh,
true. Wait, I think there is one that's not. Yeah. So the very last one is not after the draft. I haven't done it yet, but all of them up until the last one, I think whoever had drafted the player had already drafted them when this was made.
okay. So Bill Cowher's kind of player, tough and something. So, how
His
about I tailor for
aggressiveness
this
and
one?
mobility for a big man.
Okay, maybe not. Hold on. What's in this one? Casey Hampton.
Oh, that's a very good guess. No, it's not Casey Hampton. This one is Alan Faneca.
Okay, all right. He came to mind, but I thought Casey Hampton is more aggressive.
All right, the next one. He worked with improved anticipation and tight spiral throwing into windows, velocity to stay ahead of closing coverage, arm strength to push deep outs without a problem, able to extend the play and win on the move with his arm talent to make off platform throws.
I mean, it sounds like Ben Roethlisberger, but I assume not because we already had him. So Mason Rudolph.
It's not Mason Rudolph.
This one we drafted.
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be that hard, right? Um, it would be funny if it's for like Antoine Randall Ellis. Right?
Yeah.
He does have a good
Apparently,
arm.
Heinz Ward played some quarterback too at Georgia. I didn't
Oh
know
yeah,
that.
yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Dennis Dixon.
No, this is actually Kenny Two Gloves.
Really?
This is Kenny
That is a
Pickett. I was like,
surprising
wow.
evaluation. Yeah.
Yeah, I made a mistake. I had initially had this above Roethlisberger because I wanted you to guess Ben for this, and then I forgot and I put Ben above him. I mixed up the order. And then,
This is
all right.
a that is a surprising evaluation of Kenny Tudlove. Yeah.
Uh, oh, wait, I lied. There's one more hard one. This one's pretty hard. So this is also different because this is not from the year that this person was drafted. This is actually from the year after. So this person had played a year in the league, and the Pittsburgh Tribune Review said the Steelers should have expected more than they got from blank at his draft slot overall a season ago. This was in retrospect, this is kind of a dumb one to include. I don't know why I included it.
Mm, should have expected more than they got. They should have
I
expected
I'll
more than they
give you
got,
a
but maybe they
hint.
expected what they got.
I'll
Anyway,
give
so
you a
yeah.
hint. The hint is that this quote comes from the same article that a previous quote I have read to you came from.
It's such a strange remark. They should have expected more than they got. Like based on the but it doesn't say they did expect more than they got. That's what's baffling to me. It's like maybe they had the right expectations, but they should have had higher ones. I don't quite get. Anyway,
I think that
um,
if I remember correctly, the Pittsburgh Tribune Review was it Pittsburgh Tribune Review article was basically complaining about the Steelers' draft ability. So the quote I gave you earlier was complaining about the current class they had just drafted, and now they moved on to complaining about the person before,
okay,
basically saying they're in rebuild mode because they can't draft.
Mike Wallace.
It's not Mike Wallace. This one's particularly hard. The other hint I'll give you is we've also talked about this player so before in this quiz. So like impactful players drafted in back-to-back years.
Oh God.
And the person in year two didn't like the person drafted in year two, and nor did he like the person who was drafted the year before.
Damn, this is tough. Who is it?
This is Troy Polamalu again.
Okay,
So
okay.
that article talking about how Ben wasn't going to be impactful as a rookie also said they should have expected more out of Troy last year,
Okay.
thinking that they're
Wow.
terrible at drafting everyone.
I
All
guess
right, I
I guess a lot of my memories of Like, yeah, I have like very caricatured maybe memories of those players in their early years. Um, and yeah, I guess I knew that like Troy as a rookie wasn't doing that much, but whew, it's tough.
Yeah, this is well, I'll put you out of your misery after this last one.
I got the
Uh,
first one. I'm happy about that.
I know. I really thought you were gonna go on a run after the first one. I was like, because that one
Well, I
wasn't
did.
obvious.
Went on a opposite run.
All right, the final one. Blank is a bit overhyped. His technique tends to get a bit sloppy in the fourth quarter, and I have concerns with him at the next level against better athletes in a more complicated scheme.
Technique gets sloppy in the fourth quarter. All right, that seems like maybe a lineman. Um, Maybe it's Pouncey again. I will go.
That
I'll
is
get Pouncey.
Pouncy. Yes.
Oh, wow, look at that. Bookending a bunch of wrong answers with two great guesses.
I mean, that's pretty impressive, honestly. It's I I should have definitely had like longer quotes with more people talking about positions. I don't know why I thought talking about positions would give too much away, but
Uh, I
it's
feel like there was. If I don't think some of those in hindsight, like if I had known how to read them, I could have maybe like knowing like why you brought these quotes up would have been. I should have thought more about that. Um, like some of those were definitely gettable, and I didn't get them.
yeah, I didn't do that many that were just like straight up evaluations. I feel like Martavis Bryant and Alan Faneca maybe are just like straight up, but like I picked Pickett because it's like I would never have thought that that would be his evaluation. uh, all right, well that is all I've got for the state of the Steelers. Do you want to do some NFL stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I have actually while we're kind of like I have one that's like kind of on the Steelers, and I want to know from your perspective what you think. Basically, I don't know if that's general NFL, but anyway, what? How would you evaluate as like a semi-impartial observer the Steelers quarterback situation right now? Is it? I mean, certainly, I it's not as good as it could be. Um, but like, what's does this just look like totally desperate, or what do you think?
Well, I think coming back with Pickett and Rudolph would have been totally desperate. I think we're a step above totally desperate, but I also recognize that I am like living on Mount whatever right now. So my quarterback evaluations may not be the most reliable. But yeah,
Yeah, you're like at the peak of like any quarterback in NFL history, essentially. So,
yeah.
uh,
So I have very high standards at this point. Uh, but I to me the only possible way that this could work, or the only way that I feel like this was a good idea. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think it was a good idea because the quarterback room got better. But the only way that I could see this long term being okay is if there's confidence in the building that with a little bit of time and seasoning, they can turn Justin Fields into something like okay.
hmm.
If they really feel like, you know, they have an answer for the fact that Fields holds the ball too long and takes too many sacks, and they can figure out how to get him like more into a quicker offense. Because I don't believe Russell Wilson. I think he can be okay, but I don't think he's gonna win playoff games for you. Like I think he might win 9 games or 10 games, but I don't think
That's
he'll
what we love to do,
do anything more.
right?
Yeah, like he would be more the same to me. Whereas like, which I guess may be a little unfair because Tomlin has won 9 and 10 games with worse, including last year. So, but yeah, am not excited unless there is some long term plan for Fields.
Yeah, I think that seems fair. I think that's it's hard to get super optimistic about Wilson at this stage of his career being some sort of savior. So, I mean, it's not hard. It's just impossible to get that optimistic about that. Yeah. So like if the and the long term plan here is just really unclear, I guess. But uh, if there is one, I guess you get yeah, you have some hope for Fields, but don't exactly know. It's hard to know what to hope for, really, at the quarterback position this year or beyond. Um,
Like,
so okay,
is
yeah,
is there some hope that like to me you either want Fields to go in one of two directions. You want him to be like discount Jalen Hurts, like someone who you get a really strong run game, you have like zone read stuff. He, is able to throw because he does have a big arm, like if that kind of offense, or like maybe saying discount is too much, but like homeless man's Lamar Jackson, like that kind of offense. Like if you could be like that level of like, I feel like that's the hope that he could be a lesser version. I don't know that I think he could be as good as either of them, but who knows? But
well, I
yeah,
definitely don't think he's going to be like Lamar Jackson level. I mean, you can't expect that, right?
yeah, that would be
Or
tough.
um, I think. By the way, I just want to correct. I know that Jalen Hurts' first name is Jalen. I think a few episodes ago I said Justin Hurts at the time because I was thinking Justin
Oh,
Fields. Um, but I do know this just for the listeners out there. Yeah, okay, but I think that's right. I think in general, okay, maybe I'm like when we first signed Wilson and Fields, it was like very exciting. It was like, oh, new possibilities, right? But having calmed down a little bit, it is not that exciting, right? It's okay. Right? I mean, it's better than it was.
right. I
I
think it
agree
was
with that.
still good to do because it's moving in the right direction, but hopefully they don't think they're done.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know exactly. Yeah, I wonder what the long term plan here is very unclear. Maybe there isn't one really. We'll just see how it goes.
All right. So I'll continue on our theme of doing NFL questions that still kind of have to do with the Chiefs and Steelers, but I thought this would be a nice opportunity. I actually wrote this question down way back during the divisional round of the play. Actually, I think during the wild card round. Um, but I thought we have a unique opportunity to compare the Steven Nelson experience. You know, we each had him on our team. So I'd be curious to know, like, what was your experience in his 2 years in Pittsburgh? I could talk about his 4 years in Kansas City. Uh, what was Steven Nelson like
Wow,
as a Steeler?
it's kind of weird that it's like it's somehow like I know, yeah, I remember him being a Steeler, but my valued uh, portion is totally gone. I think is this right? I think maybe after the second year we were
Yeah, I think
one
we
of those
were.
years he was good, and then one of those years he was not that good. Okay,
Yeah, I think it was the
is
second because you cut him early, right? I think he was like on a longer term deal. I think
that right?
like a
Maybe
3 or
that's
four
right.
year deal, and he was cut after two. I think.
Yeah, I believe that. Um, and it was like the first year was good, and the second year was. I don't know. I honestly don't. I don't know. uh, it's kind of actually scary a little bit because it seems like I should know. I should remember more about this. Uh,
Well, I mean, that might
uh,
say enough as it is.
that is true.
If he was
Maybe
that
my lack of memory is
nondescript.
yeah. Maybe that's right. I don't know. What what's your take on Steven Nelson?
So Steven Nelson was someone who like it's one of those things where certain players have like a certain techniques that just frustrate you, even if they're not that bad. And Steven Nelson was a man guarder. Like he never ever turned his head to the ball, and so like and he wasn't bad at it. It's just would it's one of those things that's so frustrating when you see like a ball thrown to a guy in the end zone and the DB is like not turning his head, not turning his head, uh, and sometimes giving up a touchdown. I was actually shocked when I went back and looked at it. He got 4 picks in 2018, and I could not believe that. Like, I don't remember 4 Steven Nelson picks during that season. Like, I don't know, but I would have guessed he didn't even have 4 picks in his entire 4 years in Kansas City. So that was a big surprise to me. Well, and the other reason we remember Steven Nelson a lot in Kansas City is that he did a ton of talking on his way out. Like when he left, he basically complained, which I think is actually legitimate, that the 2018, if you remember, our defense was like so bad that year, and he just said that the Chiefs scheme was way too predictable, and that teams like knew what they were doing, and they basically just played man all the time. And he was like, I was up to the challenge, but schematically it's a problem. And then he said something about like, I don't know if he said he always wanted to be a Steeler, but he said something about the fact that he was way happier being in Pittsburgh than Kansas City, which rubbed Chiefs fans the wrong way.
I think he said something. He said something after we cut him. I don't remember
Oh, really?
something, or maybe I'm making this. Maybe this was some other cornerback that we cut, and they expressed discontent. It certainly happened before, but I associate him that I have very few memories of
I
him
feel
in
like
general, which is
didn't
so strange.
didn't he have a game? I feel like he had a multi-pick game for the Steelers once. The only reason I remember this is because he used to be a Chief, and I was like, oh my god, he. It might have been against the Eagles or somebody. I just remember Steven Nelson getting a maybe I want to say 3, but that seems like way too many. There's no way he
Three
got 3.
interceptions. Wow,
He
that
probably just
is.
got 2, but that was probably exciting enough for me that Steven Nelson got 2 picks when he didn't know how to locate a ball in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like kind of played like Ike Taylor, except Ike Taylor did look for the ball occasionally, just dropped it uh, repeatedly. But wow, yeah, no, that's one where I have to like. I guess I've just like sort of blocked him out somehow for some reason. But I have very little educated opinion about Stephen Nelson and his time with the Steelers. But I guess I wouldn't be surprised if he had a two-pick game in there. I would. I mean, I'd be a little bit surprised, but given how little I remember, yeah, I don't know. Um, this is like just independently making me worry about my memory a little bit. But anyway, um, okay, totally different question. Unless there's anything more to reminisce about Stephen Nelson. Gosh, I'm gonna have to look him up after this podcast. Have there been times when you like there was a loss that was so painful that you had to like sort of evaluate how committed you were as like whether you were too committed as a fan?
Yeah, I think that 2017 playoff loss to the Titans would. That's probably. Would I say my low point? It's hard to say it was my low point when it wasn't the worst loss that we had. Because the worst loss was probably the Andrew Luck game in the playoffs against the Colts. That the worst loss that I watched. Is that fair? I think just in my life, the hardest I ever took a loss was when we lost to the Colts, Peyton Manning and the Colts in 2003 playoffs that year when nobody punted in that game. Um, so a couple of those for 2013, that loss to the Colts, for some reason I didn't reevaluate that much. I was a little distanced from like I obviously like followed the season, but I had spent the first part of that season living in actually not just the first part of that season. I spent that entire football season living in the Caribbean. That's when I was in medical school. So it was a little harder. First of all, I was in medical school, so I was just studying all the time. It was a little harder to like watch games. So I did. I mean, I remember that season, like watching the Jamal Charles had a 5 touchdown game at the Raiders. I remember watching that. That was great. But yeah, so for as much as I mean, I watched the entire playoff loss and that stunk. But for some reason, because of the relative and because that season was such a positive. We had been so bad, then we went 11-5. It was Reid's first year, so for whatever reason, it wasn't like as painful. Maybe it's because we had been so bad before, and we were at least back in the playoff. But yeah, that 03 one and then the 17 loss was really bad. But at least we had the, not that we knew it was going to be this great, but we had the carrot of like, okay, we're moving on from Alex Smith and we're going to bring up this young guy, Patrick Mahomes. So like the next year was kind of like, okay, we're doing something. And we clearly believe in this guy. Like, I remember thinking like, yeah, we're like, hopefully we'll go like 8-8 or something with the new guy, and then maybe he'll be like really good in year 2 or 3 or something, and then we came out like gangbusters. So,
Yeah. Where'd you go? 12-4
12 and
the
4,
first
yeah.
year starting. Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun. That was fun to watch. Okay, so you think maybe like the 2003 playoff loss to the Colts?
Yeah, that. Although I definitely didn't reevaluate my fandom, so maybe 17 was the most I like. Was just like, why do I do this? Because I had to
Yeah.
drive back from that game, and it was a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's like we all have those moments, right? Like all football fans, if you've been a fan long enough, you'll have a moment where it's like, oh, you cared too much, and then yeah, you do have to like step back and check. And I remember, just I know we have to go to break in a second, but I think it was like I had one of these moments in like the preseason of it was 2002 or 2003, I think. We lost a preseason game, and I was like almost crying. I was like on the verge of tears because it was like it was to the Lions or something who were terrible at that point. But and then my dad pointed out to me like, Chris, this is a preseason game, uh, and it doesn't mean anything. And you're all like what is going on here? So I think that was one where I probably at least should have evaluated more. I'm not sure if I did at that point, but. Yeah, if you ever cried after a preseason game, you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Should we take a break and then come back?
All right, sounds good. And we're back. All right, it's time to wrap it up with our anecdotes.
Can I just like jump in real quick?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dur- During the break, I looked up Steven Nelson's highlights. I also caught so very recently he said something negative about being cut by the Steelers still, which is a little odd several years later.
Hmm.
Um, but it was like this off season. So he does seem to like take it personally when teams let him go. The highlights were fine. They were only like 2.5 minutes long, so I I don't really know what to make of that. But um, anyway, yeah.
Wait,
I
were
guess
there
I
two
don't.
picks in any one game?
No,
Oh
there
man,
were I think 3 picks total. Um,
that sounds about right though.
yeah, yeah, um, and one of them was off a tip. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, it was fine. It was whatever. Not the best corner we've ever had.
The reason why he even came to mind was I had when the Texans played the Browns this year, he had like an 80-yard pick six of Joe Flacco, and that's when I was like, oh, Steven Nelson.
Yeah. He had a pick of Kenny Pickett, I think, when we played the Texans this year too.
Oh,
And I think he talked about it after that game. Now that maybe not. Maybe I'm making that up. Anyway,
maybe the
um,
memory's better than you're giving it credit for. It's starting to come back.
maybe. I think watching those highlights or something. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. You're about to say an anecdote.
Oh yeah. So this one comes from our time at Rockbridge. I actually will not say the name of the class because in order to tell this anecdote, I have to say the teacher's name. So I feel like I don't want to give too much information. The teacher's first name. It's integral, unfortunately, to the anecdote. So I won't say what class it is. But we took a class together our senior year, and now that I look back on it, like we really didn't think about how young some of these teachers are. Like I, this teacher must have been in her 20s, like maybe upper 20s at like the most. but I just remember being struck from day one. And we took this class with uh, a couple people that were even more irreverent than we are. And so, and we were just struck by this teacher, like what the way that she decided to teach things. And I I'll just give some examples. um, so one day at toward the end of class, as like entertainment for us, she decided to play the end of, you know, those Richard Simmons like workout videos where they like dance, you do like dance workouts to the oldies. And I feel like part of the appeal of those videos was that there are like very ordinary people, ordinary looking people doing the workouts. So I think it's like a very actually progressive at that time, like very inclusive video in the sense that I think it just like appealed to the general population. You don't have to be an athlete to do these workout videos. But like they do a thing at the end where they have like them all line up and they like come up one by one and like do their little dance. And like this was her, she was just like, "Oh, I this is so fun. Like we can watch this like it's I don't I remember as an I may not have even yet been 18. I may have been 17. Just thinking like this what? Like this is fun? Like just sitting like just watching these people who I guess you feel like are dressed weirdly or are, you know, overweight or whatever, just like going up and I just remember being like I cannot believe we are doing this in a classroom in high school. Like this is the entertainment that we are getting at the end of the class that she's just showing us this bit of video.
I
And
don't remember this. I don't think I remember this at all. But that's it. Like, do you think it was just like I don't have anything else to talk about, so we'll watch a video? Is that like filling
yeah, but
time or
I
something?
like she was very enthusiastic as if she, you know, when you're like, you're convinced that you've got something good, like it was like that. It was like, oh, you're going to love this. Like, it
We're
was
all
just
like,
like, we're like, what like I honestly like I just the only thing I really remember besides like I would say it's probably true of most people. It was definitely true of me. Way more judgmental when I was a teenager than I am. Not that I'm not a judgmental person now. Like I feel like I'm a fairly judgmental person, unfortunately, but it was way worse then. And I remember just thinking like she was the dumbest and just not understanding. Like I remember just being so confused. Like what are we doing? Like why? Like you almost feel like you're missing something. It's like, is there something that I don't know. The other thing, the other part of that story I remember, I don't know why I remember this to this day, was she was teaching our class and again it was just kind of an aside. She was just like she turned the class and she was like, have you ever like thought about how weird your name sounds? Like if you say your name over and over again, like how weird it sounds. And she in front of the class went, Amanda, 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 and it was just like it just starts to sound so weird. And I remember just being like, what are we doing? Like what is happening right now? Like did I just like have I had a stroke? Like what is going on? I just feel like we had so many times in that class where I just didn't. And the funny thing is, I think the material we learned was actually quite useful. Like it, you know, we ended up, at least I ended up like taking a lot of college classes that I felt like at least this provided a rudimentary foundation for some of my college classes. And I it's weird to me to have that like dichotomy in my head. One of our friends got a PhD in this field, you know, like afterwards. I don't know that he would consider this class to be formative whatsoever. He was way more
I can't
disdainful
imagine that. Yeah.
about the class than I was. But, but like, it's weird because it wasn't like we were learning useless material, but everything, and it's her mastery of the material was sufficient that I, you know, because in high school you basically just have to go through the textbook and do the assignments, and she knew how to get us to do the different things we had to do the assignments, and I don't feel like we ever. But yeah, it was there were moments like I will forever remember that, just her standing in front and being like, Amanda, Amanda, Amanda. And even at 17 or 18, I was just like, I do not understand what's happening.
What are we doing? Just filling time or something? Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't. I don't think I remember many like episodes from that class. I remember where it was in another classroom, kind of. But and I also remember thinking like this seems like important stuff, like constantly throughout the class, which is like I think fairly unusual for me in my high school classes. Like frequently, I thought like this is not important, whereas now I wish I paid more attention. But that one I've forgotten much of it, and I do think that at the time I appreciated that that was significant.
I
um,
my recollection too is that like you were the most like studious and committed in that class. Our friends were like not at all committed whatsoever, to the point that they would like skip class to play ping pong and stuff. And I was somewhere in the middle. I feel like initially I got pulled more toward them, and then like I was never someone, unless it was very basic, I was never someone that could just like BS my way through a class. Like I had to actually learn the material. So I feel like I like got pulled wayward for a little while, and then was like, no, no, I actually have to like pay attention to this class, and came back to like being someone who actually like participated actively.
but wasn't that a class where it started off very simply, and so it was easy to like get the impression like I
Yeah.
don't have to work in this class,
Yeah.
and then sort of like ramped up at some point, like oh wait, I
Yeah.
do have to pay attention.
Yeah, I
I have
think
to
that's
work
what
here.
my experience was. And I think our friends didn't really like, they were good enough to like skate by and just like barely get an A grade that they wanted. Whereas I was not as confident that I would be able to do that. So I was just like, I'm going to actually work hard in this class. But it took me a good like quarter of the year to come to that conclusion. I remember I started out being like, "Oh, this is nothing," and then I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be in trouble if I don't get it together."
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that's my memory of that class. Like it started off, yeah, again with just like wait, we have a whole class on this,
Yeah.
and then it ramped up.
And I
Um,
wonder if part of it was the teacher's demeanor that made it feel like, it's like, oh, well, she's teaching this class. Like, it can't be that bad.
yeah, I
And then
wonder
it's
if that's
like,
what it was.
and then after a while, it's like, oh, no, wait. I actually have to pay attention.
Yeah. Um, No, yeah, it got to the point where I remember being like very stressed whenever like getting tests handed back. Like, did I do well enough on this test to get my A or whatever? um,
Well, that was the thing, too. Like, when we moved from Columbia Independent School, where it just had the standard, like, A, B, C, you needed a 90% to get an A. And as most teenagers, all we cared about was getting the bare minimum to get our A. And then at Rockbridge, you had to get a 95. Like, otherwise you were at an A minus, and that actually dinged your GPA. So suddenly it was like a whole different ball game. Like we were, with getting a 95 even on an easy class is, if you just make one mistake here or there,
yeah,
you get a 14 out of
and
15. That's an A minus.
and they don't weight. They did not weight your GPA, right? I remember we took
Nope.
like all these AP classes and we were just screwed by the.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was annoying. Anyway, um, uh,
I have to complain about one more thing. It's amazing that these things don't leave us being in our 30s,
yeah,
but like,
yeah,
like, did you like nobody that, because we had four valedictorians, they all had 4.0 GPAs. Nobody that took AP Bio was a valedictorian, and I remember just being like, "Come on!" Like, it's just like I think nobody got A's every quarter in AP Bio. It was like impossible.
I remember that course being very difficult, and it was, I think, basically because of the way the teacher graded things, right? You had to have every, like,
Oh yeah,
there were like 18 things you needed to write in your one-page paper, and if you had 17 of them, you got points off. Right? Um, and it wasn't clear
yeah.
ahead of time what those 18 things were, right? It was, yeah,
I remember especially on the labs, like you had to be so pedantic with how you labeled everything. I have a memory of her great, like, I think it was when we were doing, remember when we had like plants like with their stems, and we had water in a thing, and we were measuring like how much water flowed up the plant, like, and so I remember on the axis like of my graph, I had labeled it like flow rate, and her comment on it was flow rate of elephants in Taiwan, question mark. Like I needed to be more specific on what the flow rate was, and I lost the point for that. And that's what that class was like. Like it was, oh, like yeah,
No,
it was not that. The funny thing is, usually either you have a teacher that is pedantic or teaches good material, but she did both. Like she was a good teacher. She was just
yeah,
also incredibly pedantic and like just made you be, I don't know, made you be so specific. And I wonder if, because I think we both got A's the second half of the year, I wonder if we had come in like prepared for what this would be like, if we would have been able to get A's the whole year. But I remember digging myself such a big hole early on because of missing all these little points that I wasn't able to come back up to a 95.
yeah, that was. I remember that classmate. Like I remember going in, like my first. So I don't remember how long, a couple months, I guess. I was like supremely frustrated. It's like I'm doing what I've always done, and I'm getting marked off for things I never got marked off for before.
Yeah.
And I think I learned that at that valuable lesson, right? Like I guess you have to, like different teachers are going to demand different things of you, and it you're not going to be able to fight it, right? So you just got to like learn. And I do feel like that, it was valuable to learn how pedantic one can be. uh, uh, one has a capacity for pedantry that one doesn't know necessarily until one is pressed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was debating which anecdote here to tell. I think this one is like a really faint memory, and maybe again you'll like remember it better than I did. But back at CIS in the old lunch place there, I have a memory of somebody, one of two people, I think, unscrewing the lid on a salt shaker and then putting it back on, and then our science teacher taking it to salt his food and just pouring it all over, and then being very upset. Uh, this is what happened, right? This did happen,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was our science teacher.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah, and
Because
that
it was not uncommon that some people would do this, but I think if you were thinking about like the worst possible mark to have in that entire school, like our science teacher might have been number one. It was at least up there. Like
yeah,
because these people were not doing it with the express, like they didn't know who was going to sit at the table and going to pour the salt. I don't think they would have done it if they knew it was going to be him.
I don't think that they ended up, like, it wasn't clear who to the teacher who did it, right? So I don't think they ended up really getting. But I remember sitting at the table, seeing it happen, and everyone was just like, "Oh God,
Yeah, it was a
this is
very,
bad."
very intense. And it's worse when you're like one of the quote unquote perceived good kids, because then the teachers turn to you and it's like, who did this? And you're like,
Yeah, I
like
don't remember that happening, but I could imagine that having happened. Yeah,
I don't, specifically remember in this case either. I remember other cases where the science teacher asked me what happened in situations and just being like, ah,
why are you putting me in this
yeah,
situation?
like, well, and especially because like it's different when, like our U.S. history and government teacher at Rockbridge, Mr. Priest, like he was such a reasonable person. I feel like I would follow any request that he asked me to do. You know what I mean? Our science teacher was not in this category, so it's like one of those where like not only I mean I'm such a rule follower that I feel like I always feel the pressure to try to, but it's not like I want to help you. You know, like aside from the fact that you're a position of authority and I'm a rule follower, like that's the only motivation I have. It's not like we have like a relationship where I'm like, here, I'll try to help you out here. That
Yeah,
made it
uh,
even harder.
I think like yeah, Mr. Priest knew like, or at least had a different sense, I guess, of which one he could ask students to do something or not, right?
Hmm.
This was another one of the anecdotes I was thinking about bringing up, but at the time, he intercepted a note being passed to one of the students in class.
No.
Yeah. I don't know how much I can say in the podcast there. It was facetious. It was not. It was sent in jest from one student to another, but Mr. Priest intercepted it and, and read it, and it like took a minute because he had to compose himself after reading it. But it was
Oh.
it said I don't know if I can quite say what it said on the I mean it's not doesn't have any bad words in it, but the string of words together is, I would say, explicit content. So maybe, maybe I should not say it, but we'll reminisce after the podcast about this.
Oh man, I can't believe I don't remember the story.
Yeah,
This sounds like
this
this
is a
is
good
something
one.
that I would remember. Oh man.
I we were in his classes together, right? So it
Yeah,
must
we
have been.
were. I
Yeah.
must have forgotten. Yeah. Unless
Okay,
I was like, I used to have, I guess junior year, that would have been, because every 2 years I would be out for a little while when my family went to India. That's the only time I can imagine not being there.
maybe that was it. I don't know. We'll see if you remember it after the podcast. All right. Well,
Oh,
that was all. It was a salt shaker story.
well, that's episode 10.
Episode
Um,
10.
and I guess we won't be doing an episode next week, right? But
Yeah, but 2 weeks we'll be back.
2 weeks we'll be
That'll
back.
be right near the draft, right?
Oh, yeah, I need to check actually when, yeah, we'll be getting close.
It'll be around
Uh,
that. Yeah.
I have we have a mutual friend who is a like huge Ohio State fan, and I have already approached him and saying that if one of our teams drafts an Ohio State player early, I'm gonna have him come on and break down the player, so we can get some insight into because he like follows recruitment and boosters and everything. So uh,
That would be awesome.
that if you want to see someone who's way more entertaining than us talk on this podcast, then you should root for an Ohio State player to be drafted by the Chiefs or the Steelers.
We should have him on anyway. I feel like it would be a fun guest.
Yeah,
He would have
yeah,
more of these anecdotes too.
yeah. That's true. He will remember a lot more than we do. He's still in touch with a lot of people, so I wonder if that helps prime keep your memory going
Yeah,
too.
yeah. All right. Well, um, thanks for listening again, and we'll be back in 2 weeks here.
Yeah, and we'll keep putting out content in the interim, so follow along with the shorts and whatever we do if you so choose. All right. Well, until next time.
See ya.